Hello and welcome to Dove Biology, APES Lessons to Go. In today's video, we'll be exploring the concept of urbanization. Urbanization is defined as the creation and growth of cities and their surrounding developed land. Here, in this computer reconstruction, we can see the urbanization that took place on the island of Manhattan. Worldwide, urban population dynamics have seen four major trends. The first trend is that the proportion of individuals living in urban areas is increasing. In 1950, less than 30% of the world's population lived in urban areas. Today, over 50% of the world's population live in urban environments, with a projection of almost 65% of the world's population living in urban centers by 2040. The second major trend that we see is that urban areas are expanding rapidly in number and in size. This rapid urbanization has driven the evolution of the megacity, which are urban centers with more than 10 million people. 60 years ago, there were only two megacities, the combination of New York and Newark, New Jersey, and Tokyo. Today, there are 22 megacities, and by 2025, there will be 30 or more. Our third major trend in urban population dynamics is that urban growth is slower in developed countries. Here we can see a nighttime sky view of all the continents of the world. The lighted areas are where we have our major urban environments. You'll notice that a lot of the urbanization is taking place along coastal regions of the continents. These urban environments occupy only about 2% of the Earth's land area. When we examine where most of the megacities are, over 18 of them are actually in developing countries, while the remaining are found in our developed countries, further illustrating that urban growth is much slower in these developed countries. The fourth major trend that we see in urban population dynamics is that poverty is becoming increasingly urbanized, especially in developing countries. The United Nations estimates that at least 1 billion people in developing countries live in crowded and unsanitary slums and shantytowns. As people move to cities in an attempt to find a better life, the cities unable to grow to take care of that infrastructure. And so these poorly constructed slums and shantytowns kind of crop up. And they're not connected to, nor do they receive the city's services, which results in people living in these quite unsanitary conditions. There are many reasons why people will move into cities. We can classify these reasons as either a push or a pull reason. Push factors are those that force people out of rural areas. For example, poverty, the loss of jobs in agriculture, and famine will push people to go to the city in order to escape the poor life in the rural environments. There are many incentives to living in a city that can actually pull individuals from their rural lives where perhaps they're being successful in an attempt to incentivize them to move to these urban centers. The call of jobs, education, and perhaps governmental incentives are going to pull people towards the cities and help them to perhaps seek better jobs or a better life in the city. There are two ways that a city can grow. It can either grow out or grow up. When cities grow out instead of up, we say that it is creating urban sprawl. This sprawling of the city into the urban areas can be the result of several factors. One, simply poor planning. As city planners design their city, if they don't have it set up to grow up, it's inevitably going to grow out. When land is available and affordable, people might decide to move out of the city into urban and to suburban areas in order to reap the benefits of a less city-centric life. The low cost of gasoline and the availability of car ownership is going to also encourage people to live outside of the city and commute into the city for their jobs. In the United States, we've seen the sprawling of several large cities such that they've kind of bled into each other to create what we call megalopolises. The one major megalopolis on the East Coast is called Bow Wash, which is the major cities that go from Boston all the way down to Washington, D.C. Here we can see a satellite image, a colorized satellite image of Las Vegas, Nevada. Beginning in 1973, we notice how that city has gone from being centralized to being spread out, and a great example of urban sprawl. There are many pros and cons for urbanization. One pro is that urban dwellers actually live longer and have lower infant mortality due to better access to health care. Urban areas can certainly offer more job opportunities and better education. Urbanization can actually help preserve biodiversity by concentrating people into a smaller area. Remember that almost all of our major urban centers only take up about 2% of the Earth's surface. Population growth actually slows as a result of urbanization because people in urban areas have lower birth rates, most likely due to the fact that there's less area to be able to rear your young, and there's less need for large families in city environments. And finally, another great environmental benefit is that mass transit and recycling programs are much more feasible in urban centers than in a more spread out suburban or rural environment. Despite the many benefits of urbanization, it also has many disadvantages as well. For example, cities are rarely self-sustaining. They have a high resource demand and they produce a lot of waste. As a result, cities can produce a very large ecological footprint. Growing cities, when not planned appropriately, can actually threaten biodiversity as they sprawl out into rural environments. Many cities lack the vegetation that would assist in producing shade, absorbing pollutants, and recycling and producing oxygen for the city dwellers. Due to the high population concentration and the presence of automobiles, cities oftentimes have concentrated chemical and noise pollution. Also, as a result of having a high concentration of people, their high density can actually spread infectious diseases, and cities can actually become a hotbed for the production of emerging diseases. Finally, as a result of their construction in concrete and asphalt, as well as large buildings that block the flow of wind, cities can absorb and generate enormous amounts of heat and create an urban heat island effect. As these urban areas grow and merge, the overall heat island effect can actually alter the climate of a larger area. A major factor in determining if a city will grow vertically or horizontally is if it relies mostly on mass transit or the automobile. While motor vehicles provide personal benefits and promote economic growth, they also pollute the air and they will promote urban sprawl. In order to reduce our dependence on automobiles, especially in urban environments, is to redesign urban transport. By having efficient bus lines with dedicated lanes and quick entrance and egress may increase ridership and reduce dependence on cars. Here we have a design for the bus system in Curitiba, Brazil, that was put together by a gentleman by the name of Jamie Lerner, who was a long-time mayor of Curitiba. His belief was that a car is kind of like your mother-in-law. You have to have a good relationship with her, but it can't command your life. He helped redesign the city streets to accommodate large buses that are flexible in the center so that you can have opportunities for carrying a large number of passengers, since Curitiba was not a good candidate for subway systems. In order to increase the speed at which people enter and exit the bus lines, he engineered these tube-like structures which will allow for people to purchase their tickets before getting on the bus and then quickly enter and exit without slowing down the bus line. By producing dedicated bus lanes, the few cars that are available, that are used in Curitiba, aren't going to slow the movement of the people that are actually using the buses. We can introduce light rail systems like they have done in Virginia Beach and Norfolk. By reclaiming a lot of unused rail, as well as adding some additional rail lines, Commuters can now go from Virginia Beach to Norfolk and use their light rail system. By re-engineering city streets to be bike-friendly and pedestrian-friendly, it might promote alternatives to driving. Finally, another great redesign for urban transport we've seen used in Europe and now are cropping up in cities in and around the United States, including Charlottesville, is car share programs. Rather than having each individual owning cars, the introduction of car share programs will place cars strategically around a city that can be checked out online and then picked up at these city locations when cars are needed for short trips or for picking up products that require a certain amount of trunk space. When those cars are not in use, those individuals can then take advantage of the city's mass transit systems. Urbanization continues to increase steadily, and the numbers and sizes of urban areas are growing rapidly. By identifying the pros and cons of urbanization, we can design urban areas which are more sustainable for our growing population on planet Earth.